Hi, I'm Laura Goodman. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the president of PFLAG Rockland. I'm so happy to be here today doing an artist interview. I just want to talk a little bit about PFLAG Rockland and how I got involved with PFLAG. I have a 20-year-old transgender daughter who transitioned about 5 years ago. And at the very beginning of her transition, I was really scared and unsure, and I didn't know what to do. So I joined PFLAG to get support. And the minute I walked into the room, I knew that was exactly where I needed to be. Fast forward 5 years, now I'm the president and I facilitate 2 support groups a month. And it's incredible to be with these parents on their journey with their incredible children. I just feel so fortunate. So 5 years ago, I thought that having a transgender daughter was like the scariest thing to ever happen. It turns out that it was just the best gift I could have gotten. First of all, she's incredible. My daughter is doing really well. She's thriving. She's happy. And my whole family is better because of it. We're just more open-minded and our world is just better. And I get to do so many incredible things, like meet incredible artists. So I just feel so fortunate to be here. And I work with incredible people like our Vice President, Mimi Goodman, who I'd like to introduce you to.
Thank you. So as Laura said, I'm Mimi Goodman. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the vice president of PFLAG. And I joined when Laura was a little child, 25 years ago. At that time, my child came out as a lesbian, and years later came out as non-binary, and probably was always really non-binary, but didn't have the language. We didn't have the language. And I always say, if you don't have the language, you can't define yourself. You need the language to know who you are. So it is wonderful that we now have a broader vocabulary so people can see themselves. My son is gay, and he has been with his partner for 22 years, husband for 6 years. And they met 22 years ago in New York City at a Latin dance club, and they've been together ever since. They both live in London. It's another long story, not for this time. I think I'll have to tell it another time. It has to do with the laws of our country. But anyway, before we start the program, I want to say that, first of all, we have to thank our fabulous friend and fabulous artist, Lisa D'Amico, who has forged this beautiful connection with us in the artist community. And I say this because we have seen that the artist community and PFLAG is a very beautiful natural connection. And it's a connection because the children that our own children and the children that we see, they are children who push us to see the world in a different way. They expand our world in terms of gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and through their hair and their makeup and their music and their art, we see vivid, bright color, and we don't see things perhaps in that narrow, conventional way. And I feel like when we have the artists help us to see the world differently also. They expand our view of the world. And so that's where that beautiful natural connection comes in. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Laura so she can ask you a question and we can have
Thank you. So before I start, I just want to also add how amazed I always am by the artists who, always want to help us out with different events. I think in a time right now where as a parent of a transgender child, you feel sometimes very alone and scared. And, with everything that's going on in the world today, when Lisa says, okay, artists, we're going to do this event, and they all, want to help out, it just amazes me. It just helps you feel not alone anymore. So I'm so appreciative of the art community. With that, I am so excited to introduce Abbie Cohen, who is a very talented writer and photographer. And we're going to ask you 2 questions. I'm going to ask one, Mimi's going to ask another. So my first question, Abbie, is how does your identity as a member of the LGBTQ community inform your art?
Well, because I'm a transgender woman, and because I've had intimate relationships with both men and women, I guess technically I'm a couple of those letters in the LGBTQ alphabet, right? However, when I transitioned in the 1980s, the gay and lesbian community was very hostile to transgender people. And to survive, a transgender woman basically had to live in what they call stealth mode. I know when I told the personnel director about my situation, and he said, well, that's fine, but no one has to know. And by that, he meant no one should know. Of course, that did not stop me from coming out publicly on the Rafael Pineda program in 1988. So my boss got a lot of calls from the upper executives, but yeah, and after a while, everyone forgot about it. So I would say, given that I'm someone who has been kind of an outsider, both in the straight world and in the gay and lesbian world, I guess the thing that really marks my art, especially my writing, is subversion. I mean, and anger. I tend to be a little subversive and angry. I like to poke sharp sticks into people's expectations of what's real in the world. So yeah, so it's yes, it's a little strange, but yes, that's my position in both communities has definitely marked the way I write about transgender visibility now.
I think that people need those sticks, Abbie, very
Oh,
often.
thank you.
I agree.
So you're doing a service.
Thank you.
I have to. So then I want to ask you, as piggybacking on that question, do you think art, or do you see art as having the ability to change people's minds and hearts on issues such as acceptance of the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, art is a double-edged sword. I mean, if art is honest, if art is authentic, if art is original, then art is also sometimes very disturbing. I mean, for example, the photography of Robert Mapplethorpe, I think probably disgusted many more straight people than it enlightened. On the other hand, take something like the television series Pose, which was about transgender women of color and the drag balls in 1980. And I think, it was the executive producer was Janet Mock, who's a transgender woman, and the actors were transgender women. And they address issues like sex work, violence, drugs, AIDS, I think very effectively, and also in ways that made the characters very human. At the same time, however, there was this house mother character who would tend to explain, how certain situations were supposed to be processed, not only to the children of her house, but also to the audience. So the program, while I think it was very good in terms of exposing people to the challenges faced by transgender women of color, it also tended to be very didactic. So I think the problem we find here is that when art has a political agenda, it has the danger of becoming propaganda. And if it's propaganda, then it has the danger of creating narratives that don't fit everyone. And that doesn't mean it can't be art. I mean, that painting of Napoleon crossing the Alps or of George Washington crossing the Delaware, I mean, those art is very effective art. But the narratives that generate from that art, it could also be oppressive. So I do like to think that the monologue that I performed last fall, Abbie and Her Seven Vaginas, I like to think that it was both subversive, outrageous, and educational at the same time. It did not get a wide distribution, but it was very well received by many of the people who heard it. So thank you so much for asking. Yeah, I mean, and maybe it's not for children, and definitely probably not for parents with transgender children, but
So I guess what I hear you saying is it possibly could be a double-edged sword, right?
exactly, yes.
So it's a kind of complex, probably a complex answer to that question.
Yes, yes.
So I like to think that art can educate, and I think you're right. Art can, I guess, also shock and turn some people off who maybe can't be educated. There are some of those. So I want to say we want to thank you very, very much for participating in this artist interview series. We've both really enjoyed it. We've loved it, and we want to say continue to all the artists, and to you we want to say continue to make your beautiful art, whether it shocks or not. We're happy to have it, and I love quotes, and I didn't say my quote last time, but I love this quote from Nietzsche, which is, "We have art, so we shall not die of reality." So I happen to
Love it. Great one.
Excellent.
So,
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to be seen and heard. I really appreciate it.
and we
Thank
appreciate
you.
being here. So thank you.